Hello and welcome to the Unlock Your Life Purpose Summit. I am your host, Lorna Moon, and today we are super blessed and honored to have Karyn Buxman, who is a TEDx speaker, successful author, high performance coach, and a neurohumorist. And I'm going to let her tell you exactly what that is very shortly. So she's the global expert in strategic humor for business. She helps high performers go from great to world class. From the Mayo Clinic to the $1 Million Roundtable, organizations all around the world hire her to educate, inspire, and entertain their audiences again and again and again. She's one of 249 people, of which only 52 are women, who've been inducted into the National Speakers Association Speakers Hall of Fame. So that's a huge, big deal, in case you didn't know that. Her latest book, Funny Means Money, Strategic Humor for Influence and World Domination, is going to be published this year by Forbes Books. Karyn is serious about humor. Karyn, very wonderful to have you here today.
Great. It's awesome to be here, and the only person who's more effusive than you is my mother. So thank you for all those wonderful things.
Oh, I want you to start by telling everyone what a neurohumorist is.
Okay.
Because otherwise they're not going to be able to focus on anything else until they know.
And there's some of the people who are listening to us right now going, oh my gosh, another neurohumorist. How many neurohumorists is Lorna going to bring in here? So it's like, no. I live at the intersection of humor and the brain. I've been studying humor for 30 years now. Started as a mere child. And what I have found is
straight out of the womb.
Right. And the secrets of humor lie in that intersection of humor and the brain. And it's just such a wonderfully holistic process, which is one of the reasons that you and I think are going to have such a great conversation today.
Yes.
Because what I have found is that when you connect humor to education, you can create more knowledge. When you add humor to health, you can create greater wellness. When you add humor to a spiritual practice, you can create more delight, joy, enlightenment. And so whether it's in your business life, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your spiritual life, humor has great benefits. And the wonderful thing is that the process of adding humor to your life is very much the same regardless of your desired outcome.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, since this summit's all about purpose, and right now we're in the midst of all this fun COVID stuff,
right?
How can humor help people through this time?
Particularly right now with, at the time of this taping, we're going through COVID, and whether it's COVID, whether it's the protests, whether it's, a personal crisis or an organizational crisis or some other kind of thing that's going on, what we find is that our brains get pulled into a state of stress or a state of threat. And when our brains are in that state, it's very difficult for us to connect with other people. It's very difficult for us to do any kind of problem solving, much less be creative. And it certainly makes it more difficult for us to be able to really do a deeper dive and get alignment with what is our purpose, because there's so much noise going on in our head and all these alarm bells and all these things vying for our attention.
Yeah.
And that's really pulling us away from that which could be leading us to that deeper sense of purpose and connectedness.
So what advice would you have for someone? Let's say I just had been binge watching the news for the last 6 hours and I'm completely in a state of uproar about everything in the world. I'm in a foul mood and all this. How can I turn that around if I got sucked into that vortex?
Right? Because the very first thing I think of for those listeners and viewers who have never been familiar with Bob Newhart, who is a wonderful comedian who was really kind of in his prime back in the probably the 70s and 80s, but he has this wonderful video on YouTube where he is a psychiatrist, and someone is coming to him with a problem, and she's like, what can I do about it? And he's got a 2-word answer. It's like, stop it. Just like, stop it. Don't do that. First of all, turn off the news. I mean, oh my gosh, nothing could be better at fanning the flames of your threat state of your brain than being tuned into the news all of the time. That's definitely going to pull you out of the vortex by all means. But there's several different ways that humor can help when we are in these situations, and I just want to go over all of those with you in the time that we have together. And this will tie into actually the prizes of unspeakable value that we have at the end. But in terms of dealing with a crisis, humor can help you distract, it can help you reframe, and it can help you refuel. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a situation where you just feel like you have no control, you are at the mercy of whether it be someone telling you can't leave your house, or you're stuck in a car in traffic, or you're at the airport and you've missed your flight and there's nothing you can do about it. In those situations, when you feel like you're out of control, there's absolutely nothing wrong with distracting yourself. And humor is a great distraction, because let's face it, when we're in a state of stress, we can either use our imagination to pull us further into that state of stress, or we can use it to pull us out of that state of stress. And our brains experience something called an anticipatory effect. In other words, our brain experiences something that we anticipate as if it's going on right now. So when you're watching the news, and even though you yourself are a family member or a loved one has not been struck by COVID, but man, your brain is going off as if that has happened. That is the anticipatory effect in a negative way. But we can also take that same energy and be distracting ourselves with humor. And that could be something that's internal or external. In other words, you could be tuning into something funny on your phone. I've got some tips on how to actually connect and find the humor. But whether it's on your phone, whether it's with a friend, whether it's, tapping into something on Netflix or on YouTube, yourself through those means. Or you can also tap into your mindset, because oh my gosh, when you start developing this repertoire and this library of intentional, positive, funny stories, man, now you have something that's a totally portable, totally mobile skill that you can take with you any place and any time. And as you and I know, it's not even necessarily trying to go from despair and just hopelessness to bliss, but if we can just use that bit of distraction to move us up a little bit up the emotional scale, and we're no longer in despair, but maybe we're in frustration. But frustration's a lot better place to be than despair. And if we can get ourselves up to frustration, then maybe we can get ourselves up to hopefulness, and then eventually on up. So, distraction is a great thing. The second way that we can harness humor to help us in these situations is through reframing. In other words, we want to see things from a different perspective. Shakespeare once said, "Nothing is either good or bad. It's thinking that makes it so." And it's not the situation itself. It's how are we viewing this situation? And our brains are kind of lazy, to be honest. The number one purpose of our brain is to protect us, but it's going to take the path of least resistance. And reframing and changing our perspective is a wonderful, wonderful tool, but it takes effort on our brain's part. Now, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But the good news is that it's been shown humor can be a shortcut. Because what is perspective? But it's a different way of looking at things. And humor in and of itself is that taking disconnected ideas or things that are different and putting them together in a new way that delights us or that amuses us. And so by reframing with humor, we're able to play with our pain. And once we're able to play with our pain, now it doesn't have power over us. We have power over our pain. And there have been so many wonderful examples of this. If you go, onto the internet and all various kinds of social media, where you see people playing with pain, for instance, the COVID gaining weight in quarantine. I will have,
Mhm.
I'm not proud to say I have been one of those who have acquired the COVID-19. It's like, and I was trying to play with my pain. And it was like, so what's funny about this? How can I get some emotional distance from this? And then I remembered something that I saw on the internet that said, don't worry about getting fat. Fat people are harder to kidnap, or it's like eat more cupcakes, you'll be harder to kidnap, whatever that may be. And it's like, I'm not making fun of people who are overweight, but what I'm doing is that I'm playing with that pain
Mhm.
and providing that emotional distance so that I can go, okay, really, is this the end of the world?
Yeah.
No. All right, we can play with that a little bit. And so whether it's the toilet paper shortage, or whether it's being stuck with somebody that you feel like, okay, we've had enough time together now, or homeschooling your children, or there's a myriad of things that people are frustrated about, and some of them are mild and some of them are very, very serious.
Mhm.
And it may be that for that point in time, say for instance somebody's very frustrated and fearful about the fact that they're not earning any income.
Mhm.
That may not be something yet that they can play with their pain yet.
Yeah.
And in that case, now we go back to, is there a way that you can distract yourself until you feel like you have some tools that could actually give you the capability of moving a step forward? So
Mhm.
we can distract, we can reframe. The nice thing about this, it's kind of a side benefit, is another R, it's relating,
Mhm.
because humor connects us. Victor Borg once said that laughter is the shortest distance between two people.
Oh.
And from a brain perspective, one of the way cool things about this is that, when we're in a state of stress, we're firing all sorts of neurotransmitters and hormones and proteins, and we've got an increase of norepinephrine and epinephrine and cortisol and all of these things, which cause inflammation in our body, cause us irritation, cause us fear, anxiety, stress. Oh my. But when we're sharing humor with another person, in addition to decreasing all of those negative things that were going on, another positive thing that happens is that we start producing something called oxytocin.
Ooh.
And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. And when we share humor with another person, our brain helps us feel even more connected with that other person because of the oxytocin. And
Wow.
so whether it's a friendship, or whether it's a relationship, with a loved one, a spouse, a significant other, we can strengthen those relationships and leverage the power of our brains by leveraging the power of humor. So I think
Mm.
that's way cool. So we've got distract, we've
Mhm.
got reframe by playing with your pain until you can get that emotional distance. And then the third is to refuel,
Okay.
because when we're in a situation such as we are, I don't think any of us expected this to still be going on
No.
after months and months and months. We thought, 30 days, maybe 60 days, and here it is 10 years later, we're still, just exaggeration, but
Oh my God, let's hope not.
yeah, just kidding, just kidding. But but when we're in these ongoing situations that are stressful, we're constantly pulling from the reserves in a
Yeah.
holistic way. We're pulling physiologically, we're pulling psychologically, we're pulling emotionally, we're pulling socially, we're pulling spiritually. And I liken it to going shopping with your credit card, and you go out and you're pulling money from your account and you're pulling money from your account, and eventually you max it out, But it's like, oh, but there's so many things to buy out here. And you keep hitting that credit card. Well, eventually the credit card company is going to start coming in and penalizing you and punishing you. And eventually they're going to pull it from you altogether.
Yeah.
And your body's going to do the same thing. I mean, how just you personally, how do you experience the fact that maybe you're under stress or that you kind of push the envelope too far? What do you notice, whether it's physical or psychological or social or spiritual?
I mean, definitely I get exhausted and it doesn't matter. Like I'm just exhausted. I can't think. I get like brain fog or I'm just not able to
Yes.
focus. I'm just like, why can't I focus? All I have to do is these
Yes.
3 things. Why can't I get this done? It just take me 30 minutes. And it's like
Right.
3 hours later and you're like, it's not happening. Why?
Right.
And then you
Right.
get
Right.
angry and then you want to eat.
Exactly. And these things just happen one after another. And in a longer period of time, we could go into why these things are happening in your brain. But it's very realistic. When you keep pulling from all of these things, your brain is not going to give you more cognitive capacity. It's going to give you less. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how wise you are. It's you only have an X number, a limited amount of that cognitive capacity. And when
Mhm.
you've pulled and pulled and pulled from it, the brain's going to say, done, at least for right now,
Sorry.
until you start refueling it. And
Hmm.
there's lots of ways that we can refuel. And I'm sure you've covered that in various things. When we're finding our purpose and we want to refuel so that we can be better at that, we can do it through exercise, and we can do it through nutrition, and we can do it through meditation and prayer and dance and music and all of these things. But the cool thing is that humor refuels us. One of my dear friends, who is also one of the leading researchers in the world on humor, and he's here in California, Dr. Lee Burke at Loma Linda. He
Hmm.
said if we took what we now know about laughter and bottled it, it would require FDA approval. It's really that powerful. And it replenishes us physiologically. It replenishes us psychologically, socially. When we're stressed out, maxed out, we don't want to be with other people. Somebody says,
Mm.
"Oh, why don't you hop on a Zoom call with us and we'll have a happy hour?" And you're like,
And you're like, I'd
I'm
rather blow
gonna
my brains out.
right. I gotta go arrange my spices in my cabinet by alphabetical order. A much higher priority. Just leave me alone. I'm gonna comb the lint out of my screen and my dryer. I mean, it's like we tend to isolate. And so by replenishing, now you are more open to having those um, communications, those relationships, those connections with other people. And even
Mhm.
spiritually, when we get just all whacked out and we pulled from everything, everything gets out of alignment, and our priorities get out of alignment, and
Yeah.
there's so much noise going on in our heads that, again, how do you quiet that? And sometimes people think, well, humor's noisy and it's gonna keep you from being able to be in that space. But um, actually, the opposite is quite true. In some of the studies that were done, even in the last couple of years, again, going back to Dr. Burke, he found that he was looking at people's brains, and he was looking at the brains while they were experiencing stress and while they were experiencing humor. And one of the things he found that's very cutting edge was, we knew that humor was a whole brain process that affected us very holistically. But one of the things that we didn't know, because we didn't have the technology before, was that when we're experiencing humor, one of the benefits we have is that we produce a particular type of brain wave
Mm.
called gamma waves. We knew about the alpha, beta, delta, theta, but gamma waves were something that, a couple of decades ago, we couldn't even measure. When we saw it on an analog EEG, we thought it was artifact. Now, what we know is that this is a very fine brain wavelength,
Mhm.
and that it connects all the synapses in the brain. It helps them to work in tandem, in force. And people who are experiencing this gamma wave pattern, they see this gamma wave pattern in people who are practicing deep meditation,
Ooh.
deep mindfulness. It's this experience of focus, of flow, of productivity. And so it's learning to tap that and to harness it so that we can benefit those things. Because if we're more in focus, if we're more in flow, now we're in a better position to really do that work, to dig down to what our purpose is.
Mm.
Isn't that delicious?
That is delicious. So when you hear
Yeah.
people that are just like, well, I can't meditate, my brain just goes crazy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, you don't have any excuse. How about put on a funny show, a funny movie, something that you know is going to make you laugh? And you can
Right.
get in that same state. You can get that same benefit that you could if you were able to meditate. Because a lot of people, say, I can't. My brain won't shut
Yes.
up. So they
Yes.
can use the humor instead. They can
Yes.
watch something funny.
And there's so many places where maybe our environment just isn't conducive to some of these other means of getting into that flow state. But again, going back to humor, even if, in the very beginning, I said when you can tap into your mind and you can tap into those humorous memories, when I'm in a state of stress, I have a catalog of memories, but one that's a very frequent one that I pull up is an experience that I had with my mom. It was inside humor. I don't know if have you had that experience where if you tried to explain to somebody else why you were laughing, they'd
They'd know,
be,
they wouldn't get it.
yeah, it's like a dog staring at a ceiling fan. They're going, what? And so, but it was something that just entertained us and would just make us laugh every time that all we had to do was mention, do you remember the time?
Mhm.
And when I stop, close my eyes and think about that memory, I can now feel the physiological and psychological shift. I can feel myself getting into that state of being able to be more mindful, be more in focus, be more in flow. And so it's learning to be intentional. And the other secret to this is being consistent. Those two
Consistency.
things will be the game changers. And that's what really differentiates the purpose of humor for entertainment
Yeah.
with the purpose of humor for either influencing somebody or creating a state of well-being.
Mm.
Because now with entertainment, our purpose for humor is just strictly to elicit laughter and enjoyment, just for the sake of laughter and enjoyment. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we know now is there's so much more, because now
Mhm.
we can tap into humor to improve our resilience, to improve our health. We can connect, people who practice more humor have lower heart disease. We can show how people who have diabetes or who are pre-diabetics, who consistently and intentionally use humor, lower their blood glucose, to lower angiotensin and renin, which are harmful to their kidneys, will help, so many different ways, lowering their cortisol and other kinds of things. And so again, it's that intentionality for the desired outcome, and then being consistent about it, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I encourage people to get 15 to 20 minutes a day. And if
Mhm.
if you're, and why not 30 if you're really, into this.
Mhm.
But just starting that process, over time, you're going to see changes in your physical and in your mental and in your spiritual state. And so it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't require any special equipment. It doesn't require any coordination. You don't have to break a sweat. You don't have to break the bank, and you don't have to eat kale. It's like, wow, what a trifecta. You can use this and
Oh,
get the benefits.
wow. So when they say laughter is the best medicine, then that's
We're now proving what we've known to be true since even before biblical times. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, and a brittle spirit drieth the bones. We now know that this really is the best medicine. And if we're really wise about this, we'll tap into it intentionally.
so this is just really great to keep in mind with everything that's going on. If people are worried about their health or worried about,
Yes.
the virus or whatever, I mean, the best thing that you can be doing is finding a way to tap into humor like all the time, because that's going to boost your immune system.
Yeah. And it does, it boosts the immune system. And as a matter of fact, one of the caveats to that, and it's just wonderful about how our bodies are designed, one of the components of our immune system is something called immunoglobulin A. And
Mm-hmm.
immunoglobulin A is very specific to helping us ward off respiratory illnesses. Well, guess what
Ah,
happens to immunoglobulin A in your body when you're practicing humor? It boosts it. Who couldn't use a little boost of immunoglobulin A while, we're out here with masks and gloves and all of this stuff, and don't breathe or cough on me? But why not go ahead and boost your immune system so that, heaven forbid, you do get into that circumstance, your immune system is in a better position to protect you.
yeah. Then your immune system's like, huh, virus, what virus?
Yeah. And I can't say that it's going to totally prevent or totally cure it,
No,
but it's certainly going to work to your advantage. And you have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose.
nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Absolutely.
And then, like you said, being in that flow state, in that humor as well, you're going to be in the perfect state to solve these problems that come up, whether it's, job related situation you have to deal with. And
Yeah.
now you're figuring out what now, which
Yeah.
hopefully you should be, if you're watching these interviews, pursuing your purpose.
Right. Right.
And when you need help tapping into that, there it is, the laughter. You just laugh and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a second. Why did I ever think about doing this?
I've been very fortunate to find that my life's purpose is about living amazed and amused. And it's like, I prefer to be amused, but when I can't be amused, I look for that which can amaze me. And in any given time, there are so many things that are so amazing, but to help people to harness the humor and to harness the laughter to help them find their purposes, this is something that I just feel really grateful that this is the purpose that I have. It's like, wow, can you get a purpose that's much more fun than that? I mean, I'm so glad it's
Oh.
not something like, my purpose in life is to sweep up elephant dung. No. I mean, it's like, okay, I mean, for somebody that may bring them joy. For me, not so much. So, so this is a good one, and I'm happy that you invited me to be able to do that, just that very thing today.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty special. When you talk about, one of the things we've talked about on the summit a lot is everyone has their own unique purpose and not try to chase someone else's or go, oh, well, maybe I should try and be like this person or that person.
Right.
And so the fact that you're here and you're a neurohumorist and probably no one else, myself, I know I hadn't heard of neurohumorist. And I'm probably not anyone else. So
Right.
clearly that is your one thing. That is your
Right.
gift. You weren't meant to go copy anyone else. You weren't meant to copy
Right.
this researcher, that person. You are doing your one thing. And so you are just living proof that there is that one thing that is out there just for you. And don't worry if you never heard of it before, because you can invent
Right.
it. 'Cause here
And
you
I
are.
will tell you that along my path, there were a lot of people trying to convince me that this isn't what I should be doing. And granted, there are a lot other probably saner and easier ways to make a living, but this is what I am called to do. And so don't let somebody else try to force you into the mold that they think you should fit. You find that which is a total alignment with who you are and follow that. And as you follow that, you will know. Because whenever I do start to be persuaded by someone and say, oh, you really ought to be doing something like this, if you listen to your internal guidance, you will recognize that it's like, no, that's not who I am. That's not what I was meant to do. Really, when you have that ability to start listening deep, and again, that comes full circle back to what we've been talking about, when you can quiet all of that noise and drama that's going on around you, then you're going to know what feels right and what's in alignment for you.
That is just such priceless advice. Priceless. There's you can't put a dollar amount on that, because that alone, and not only will you be living your purpose and put you in the best place ever, that will save you so much pain of trying to shove yourself into somewhere you don't fit.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a fast path to just not feeling good, being stressed out, and having, your spiritual life, your emotional life, your social life, all of those things will start to skew if you let others pull you off your path. So listen to your internal being as to who you really are, what you're meant to do. And if you listen, you'll eventually hear it. I mean, some people are like, oh, I don't know, I can't hear it. Well, maybe there's just still a little bit too much noise going on, And again, go back and listen to all of these wonderful interviews that you've done, because now they're going to be able to tap into that a little better. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. You know, it's rewiring your brain to do this, because at first your brain isn't going to recognize those things, but you can rewire your brain so that it's like, oh, I recognize that, show me more of that. And your brain will respond by going, okay, yeah, sure, you
Oh,
want
okay.
more
I
of
thought you
that,
wanted
I'll
me to
show
ignore
you.
those things. Now you want me to
Yeah,
might tell you, okay. Right?
right.
I love it. Karyn, thank you so much. It's such great
You're so
wisdom.
welcome. Thank
And I
you.
think you had a wonderful gift to share with our viewers today. Tell people
I
about that.
do. I have a private link for those who want to watch. I did a very special webinar. It's called "What's So Funny About COVID?" And we're not joking about COVID. It's a much more in-depth conversation than what you and I had on how you really can harness humor and leverage laughter to deal with the crisis of COVID. But the thing that is also something that I'm very proud of is that those processes that I talk about in this webinar also can be applied to any crisis, whether it's a personal, a family, an organizational, a regional, a national, a global crisis of any kind. The process is the same. And so with that private link, they'll be able to watch a little more in depth as to what that's all about.
Awesome. Well, y'all, there's going to be a big fat button right below this recording here. So click on it and that will take you directly to that.
Yes.
Karyn, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this wisdom with us today. Really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. My delight.
Thank you.